Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the absolute maze that is business strategy. We're going to take a journey through what I like to call the strategy funnel. We'll start way up top, looking at the broad external industry environment, and slowly filter our way all the way down into the internal, day-to-day gears of a single company. If you've ever wondered why some companies just absolutely thrive while others crash and burn, this is the analysis you need.
Here's our roadmap for the funnel. We're hitting the 5 forces, knowing your target market, inside the value chain, the wider value network, and finally, spotting those hidden opportunities and threats. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so think of this as our master map. When you look at the blueprint of competitive strategy, it's really showing how all these moving parts, the forces, the targeting, the internal chains, how they all lock together to dictate if a company survives or if it sinks. You literally can't look at one piece in isolation. You have to see how the external forces completely shape the internal choices a business makes.
All right, part 1, decoding the 5 forces.
You know, when most of us hear the word competition, we just picture the guy across the street selling the exact same widget, right? But true competition is so much more dynamic than that. Michael Porter's famous 5 forces model was a total game changer for business planners because it proved that competition actually comes at you from 5 completely distinct directions. Your profit margins aren't just threatened by your direct rivals. They're constantly under siege from new entrants, substitute products, the bargaining power of your suppliers, and yes, even the bargaining power of your own buyers. Let's strip away the corporate speak for a second. Industry rivals? Those are your direct competitors. New entrants are the scrappy startups trying to crash your party. Substitutes are totally different products that solve the exact same problem. Think about how video conferencing absolutely killed a massive chunk of business travel. Buyer power kicks in when your customers can easily demand lower prices. And supplier power is when the guys selling you raw materials squeeze you for higher costs. Massive global companies use this exact framework to pick their battles. Take Unilever, for example. When they run this analysis on the consumer goods sector, they realize substitutes and new entrants aren't really their biggest headache. To ensure long-term success, they literally pour their energy into out-innovating direct rivals and keeping a lid on the immense bargaining power of their buyers. To really see this new entrance threat in action, just look at something we all use, food delivery apps. Why is there a new one popping up every 5 minutes, constantly fighting for our attention? Because the barriers to entry are practically zero. The tech is pretty easy to clone, and the drivers are usually gig workers on 0-hour contracts. You don't need massive capital to launch a full-time fleet. And because it's so incredibly easy to jump in, new entrants just flood the market. Brand loyalty tanks. Everyone is forced to offer insane discounts just to get noticed. And boom, profit margins for the entire industry get absolutely slashed. Moving right along. Part 2, knowing your target market. So shifting down the funnel from the macro industry to the actual people opening their wallets. Look, the absolute golden rule of marketing is that you cannot sell to everyone. If you try to appeal to everyone, you end up appealing to absolutely no one. That's where market segmentation comes in. Companies take this massive, chaotic overall market and slice it up into very distinct groups. Maybe it's by geography, demographics like age and income, lifestyle, or just how they buy. By doing this, a company can perfectly tailor its product to hit that specific segment's needs. What's really wild is how this transforms even the most boring everyday stuff. Take toothpaste. It is the exact same core concept, right? But if you're targeting kids, the priority is good taste and fun packaging with toy characters. If it's for teenagers driven by self-esteem, well, you formulate it for whitening. Families want decay prevention for overall health, and pensioners need specialized tooth strengthening. The product, the marketing, the price, the whole shebang changes completely just based on the specific segment you decide to go after. Now let's head down to part 3, inside the value chain.
Zooming even further down our funnel, how does a company physically build its product to fend off those external forces and win over those specific customer segments we just talked about? Well, for that, we use the value chain framework. Now, I know this diagram looks a bit dense, but it's really just a way to break an organization down into its strategically significant activities. You can basically divide it into 2 halves. Down at the bottom, you've got primary activities. This is the frontline work, getting raw materials, making the product, shipping it out, marketing it, and providing customer service. Up at the top, you've got support activities. These are the behind-the-scenes engines like HR, tech development, and corporate infrastructure that keep the lights on. How a company configures this exact chain, that is the secret to their competitive advantage. To really put this in perspective, let's compare 2 totally different value chains in the exact same industry.
On one side, think of a high-end, middle-class supermarket. Their value chain is complex and extremely service-heavy. They pour money into support activities, recruiting specialized staff, building gorgeous in-store food halls, running complex loyalty programs. It's pricey, but it builds a premium experience. Now flip that and look at the stripped-down value chain of a hard food discounter. They descale their store ops, use super basic layouts, stock maybe 1,000 items instead of tens of thousands, and sometimes they won't even take credit cards to save on fees. Their chain is ruthlessly optimized for cost leadership. The point here is, these aren't accidents. Their internal operations are explicitly designed from the ground up to deliver a very specific strategy.
Which brings us to part 4, the wider value network.
Let's pan out just a bit, because no company operates in a total vacuum. We're all part of this massive interconnected web called a value network. And when you misunderstand that network, things can go horribly wrong. Case in point, the great KFC chicken shortage of 2018. KFC literally had to shut down almost all its UK stores because they ran out of chicken. How does a chicken place run out of chicken? It was a complete cascading failure in their value network. They switched their logistics over to a new partner, DHL, who ran everything through just one single warehouse, down from 6 with their old partner. A massive motor accident caused road closures near that one warehouse, trucks got stuck, and boom, no chicken. A single point of failure in their supply chain brought the whole business to its knees. It's absolute proof that managing just your internal chain isn't enough. You've got to manage the entire network.
So how do companies protect themselves from that kind of chaos and capture more profit? One massive strategy is vertical integration. This basically means expanding and taking over other activities along your value network instead of relying on outside partners. Disney is the undisputed heavyweight champion of this. They don't just make a movie. They own the animation studio, that's backward integration, and they own the theme parks, the streaming platforms, the merch stores, that's forward integration. They control the entire interconnected customer journey. By doing that, they capture the profit at every single stage of the process.
Finally, part 5, spotting opportunities and threats.
Let's pull all of this together, the forces, the segments, the chains, and throw it at a real-world strategic decision. Meet Oceania National Airlines, or ONA. They're a traditional legacy airline. They've been flying tourists and business folks around for years, but suddenly they are staring down a massive existential threat. No-frills, low-cost budget airlines have swarmed their market, and they're charging literally half the price for the exact same international routes. ONA's traditional leisure travelers are jumping ship left and right. Their profit margins are basically in freefall. So here is the ultimate test, because strategy at the end of the day is about making incredibly hard choices. Based on everything we've just covered in the funnel, how would you save Oceania Airlines? Do they double down, focus their value chain entirely on that premium business segment with fancy meals and entertainment to justify their high prices? Or do they aggressively launch their own scrappy, separate budget brand to fight these new entrants head-on, even if it risks their pristine legacy reputation? It's a huge dilemma. I'll leave you to chew on that one. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive through the strategy funnel.